So let's start by saying hello to everyone. I'm really glad that you are all here. My name is Dorleta. I am your host today and the founder of DG Talks, where we are dedicated to build bridges through communication. At DG Talks, we believe that knowledge is the foundation for growth and positive change. And this platform is a safe place for sharing insights and fostering connections that make our world a better place. So today we have a privilege to have a remarkable gentleman, our guest, who embodies the spirit of knowledge, sharing, and empowerment. David is not an ordinary individual. He is actually an international keynote speaker. He's a trainer, a consultant, and an executive coach with a wealth of experience and wisdom as it comes with experience. And of course, he is the founder of and director, the founding director of Smart Coaching and Training. David is the expert in positive changing, in cognitive diversity. And I don't want to tell you anymore. I think we need to listen and to hear what he has to share. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please give a warm welcome or a warm virtual welcome to one and the only David Rigby. David, the stage is all yours. Please join us.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. So who is David?
Okay, my name is David Rigby. I'm from England. I was born in the north of England, went to university in London, did lots of jobs, including programming and consulting for PricewaterhouseCoopers, and became independent over 25 years ago now. So it's a long time. And in that time, I have worked in over 22 different countries. So I have reasonable experience of diversity, at least on the country and race side. And I like to think I have lots of other contacts as well. I run a company, Smart Coaching and Training, and in this version, principally, we work with associates. I have 20 associates, and we speak 12 languages between us. And we're in all four continents, which is quite a lot of the world.
Yes, so you are very, very international, and 22 countries, I believe, is even more than just in Europe, I guess, then, right?
Certainly is. Farthest away has, I guess, it's been Puerto Rico and in America, and also in Australia and Hong Kong and Singapore, and in more recent years in the Middle East.
Well, that is super interesting. But today we have you here as a guest because you have a lot of knowledge and experience that you have collected through all those years in different countries, different cultures, and a lot of diversity of cultures, religion, everything. So can you tell us, because today we're going to be talking mainly about diversity, and more in concrete, we are talking about cognitive diversity. So can you tell us about, is any different types of diversity?
Yes,
if so, what kind of types?
I'm going to put on the screen share, in theory, at least. So that's it, the power of cognitive diversity. I'm David Rigby, and this is for DG Talks, very important organization. Right, so this is me, and you've just heard most of that. Other things I have done in my spare time is I've worked as a radio presenter I've been a writer for Other Arabian News. And in my spare time, even now, I play piano and I sing in restaurants, and I do lots of karaoke, and that keeps me in good condition for presenting. So what is diversity? Well, here's just a few of them. These are all pictures of me with different people in different places. But diversity, there's a big list. Cognitive, we'll talk about in a moment, and a bit of worldview. But there's all these other things: age, gender, race, etc., etc. Most people only deal with gender and race and sexual orientation. And those are the big three. But in reality, if you're recruiting a team who have all got the same religion, have all got the same politics, they're all in the same country, then you're less likely to have a diverse team. But equally, you can have a team of all men and all women, and they could be very diverse. And that's because of the way they think. So cognitive diversity is all about the way people think. And what you really want in a team is a team of people who all think differently. You can get a man and a woman and an old person and a young person and all the rest of it. And if they all think exactly the same way, you're still only going to get a small percentage of your possible business. And that's why thinking differently is very important. So cognitive diversity is about the way people think. And the way we tend to do different things is looking at some people think more than they think rather than look at their emotions. Others are emotional and tend to be less logical. Some people are outgoing, some people are quite shy. And what you really want in your team or in your board is a collection of people who span all of that. So the big question is going to be, are any questions on what I've just said, first of all, from anybody? It's all perfectly clear. Alba's nodding, so it must be absolutely clear.
Yeah.
Working with wherever you are in any one country, one of the things that happens is countries get stereotyped. So the British tend to be thought of as unemotional and stiff upper lipped, and they don't show any emotions whatsoever. And the Spanish tend to yell and scream a lot and dance and make lots of noise. But the reality is that all these places have got all these different kinds of diverse people in them. So probably only 25% of the entire population behave according to national stereotypes. Equally, you have the opportunities for a culture belonging to a company. Many organizations like to have a company culture, and we are going to behave like this. And again, a lot of people have trouble fitting into that culture because they are personally different from the way the company's cultures operate. And it's particularly difficult if the company culture is at odds with the country culture they're currently in. So there are all these conflicts about different ways that diversity can operate. Diversity, of course, is the first part of this thing called diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I have a question to ask, because you mentioned about the stereotypes, and I believe that here we have a lot of different kind of cultures right now from different countries. So I would like to ask to the audience first a very quick question. How many people are from the UK, like David, Stephen, and Ian? So I would like to ask to Stephen and Ian, will you consider yourself the typical English stereotype that you are quiet and you are introverted. What else was, David, that you said? Yeah. Will you consider yourself that?
No.
Ian?
I try to be. I try not to disappoint people when they meet me and find out that I'm English.
That's a very good answer. Alba, where do you come from? From Colombia? Yeah. Where do you come from?
I'm Colombian,
Colombian.
but I'm half Spanish because I have lived here for many years.
So are you loud and you love dancing and you are extremely, chaotic?
Well, I love talking, dancing, karaoke, and yeah, I'm quite an energetic person, and I like. Yeah, I'm the typical Latino woman, I think.
Abdel, where are you from?
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Good to see you. Good to meet you all. Thank you, David. I'm from Morocco, but I'm currently in UAE in Dubai.
So you are the typical person from Morocco?
Well, actually, I'm Moroccan, but when I go back to Morocco, I feel like they are too noisy and they talk a lot.
Interesting. And Claire, can you mute yourself?
Hi, I'm in the car, so excuse me if you can't hear me. Can you hear me?
Perfectly. So
Okay.
where can you tell everybody where you come from and if you are the typical stereotype?
I grew up in Iran, and you'd expect Iranian women to be quiet and submissive, and I'm nothing like that.
It's great to hear that. Thank you. So David, the facts that you just told us are correct. We are all from different countries. We're all different, but some of us, we are like this percentage stereotype, and some others completely the opposite. So
An interesting question. Apart from Stephen, who I don't know, I think everyone here is actually living in a different country from the one they were born in.
yes.
So we are sort of exceptions, but it also tends to be the kind of people I spend time with, because I find that if I'm with people who've never left their hometown, and you say you've done all this, they think you're showing off, but in fact it's just your job, and that's just what you do.
Alba,
Yes, and I have a similar problem than Abdel. That when I go to Colombia, and that I go every year. Yeah, sometimes I see the difference. They speak a lot. They are too loud. And I have changed. That's why I say I'm half Spanish now.
That is interesting, right? Very interesting.
Earlier this week, I was in Nerja in Spain, and I got shown around by this guy I had helped with English years ago. He's from Estonia. And he would explain to me just how difficult it is with people in Spain getting too close to him. Because in Estonia, you have to be at least 1.5 meters apart before that's it. Otherwise, you're too close. And of course, Spain doesn't work like that. And particularly South American Spanish don't work like that at all. So you have to just have to get used to it. But it's certainly interesting that just looking at where people come from and where they are now, and to an extent, which languages they speak, makes such a difference, and they communicate with each other. Oh, I've lost through now, Ian. I'll try and get the screen back. No, Spanish. Oh.
In the meantime that you are trying to find the screen back, I find it really interesting so far. that we have a diversity of people here, and we are all interested in finding out about cognitive diversity and what is the difference between the traditional diversity and cognitive diversity. Well, those things happen sometimes when we are using technology.
One of the things it is recognized within the world that there's diversity, which is having lots of different kinds of people. There is inclusion. Those who know me will know that diversity is being asked to the dance, and inclusion is being asked to dance. And that means that if you're included, you're part of joining in. You're part of the organization, you're part of the group, rather than being invited into something specific and only for those things. Typically what happens is a board might decide they have to have a woman on the board, and they're all old men, and they get this woman on, and the only thing she's invited to do is talk about HR and women's issues. And the fact that she might know more about everything else is irrelevant because they never ask her. So she's never included, and she never feels included either. And one of the other acronyms is E. E stands for equity in England, which means treating everybody the same way, whereas in America, E stands for equity, which means balancing your investment so those who are least able get the most help. And that seems to be the way the world is moving. But certainly, what we're looking at here is, first of all, there's general acceptance that having a diverse team, whatever that might mean, tends to be more successful than one where everybody's the same. And research shows that the most important thing, you can actually have a team of old people and young people and women and men, and they're all in different countries, but if they all think the same way, then you don't have a diverse team. And one of the problems is that people tend to recruit people like themselves. So they might be ticking all these notional diverse boxes, but they're actually recruiting people like themselves. So the challenge there is you have to learn to recruit people who are not like you and still make sure they contribute and are included in the team. So the way this is working for me is the one that the most diverse way of operating is having a team that thinks differently and a team that acts differently. So if you look at one of the ways you can find out about your team, how diverse it is by understanding each of them. And there are a number of tools on the market, of which here are a few examples. There's lots and lots and lots of them, and they all look at different things. Within my collection of associates, we can deal with lots of them. These are the ones that we can deal with. But as a company, we prefer using a tool, either CME or Global Disk, and it depends on the requirement. But they both work on the same concept. I'm going to look at Global Disk first. This is a fairly standard product. It comes in very, very many labels and versions, but principally you've got the DS and the I and the C, and they stand for the things on the right. And so you've got the four colors, red and yellow and blue and green. However, while I've been using we've been using in smart coaching and training for over 10 years, is a product called CME. And it's based from the same roots as Global Disk, everything else, all of them are, but the colors are different. So we tend to use this one. And it's very, very simple. So they're in different places, but we have red, yellow, green, and blue. And the ones on the right-hand side, my right-hand side, the reds and yellows tend to be extroverts, and they go out of their way to be very noisy and make a lot of racket. Whereas the ones on the left, the blues and the greens, tend to like to think before they speak, if they actually speak at all. So that's the left and the right. But we've also got those who think. And thinking is more important, and they're very, very logical. And we have reds and blues there. And at the bottom there, we have the greens and the yellows, who tend to feel more than they speak. So they're very concerned about emotions. So, for example, a yellow will be quite extrovert, but they're also very good at expressing their feelings. And the direct opposite is the blue, who will tend to be very quiet and very process driven because they don't care about emotions. So one of the messages I sent out to do with this presentation is from my favourite estate agent, who's one of his great messages is, imagine you're waking up and smelling the coffee. Well, so who's that appeal to? Anything with imagine doesn't appeal to the blues or the reds. So that's half the population eliminated before you kick off. And then imagining something, yellows are great at it because they're used to it, and the greens like to go into it in great detail and think about it. But imagine, of that 50%, how many of them actually like coffee? And it might be half. So just using that sentence, wake up and smell the coffee, eliminates 3/4 of the population from a little message like that. So be very wary about it. Now, in more detail then, people tend to feel like this. This slide is about communication. And if you're working with someone whose main characteristic, everybody's got a combination of all of these things, but one or two tend to be prevalent, and quite often it's one. So if someone sits in the red corner there, they tend to be confident, very task-driven. They do a lot of leading, and they, particularly on communication style, they tend to be direct and to the point. Do you know anybody who's like that, Dorletta?
Are you telling me I am direct to the point?
I'm asking you, who do you know who might be?
Someone that is direct and to the point, usually the higher management, usually not all. I mean, people that they need to take fast decisions, I would say. They have to be direct and to the point. So it doesn't matter if it's management or in the army or at home, the typical a mother or a father. Is people that I would say that they need to take decisions and fast.
Okay, let's look at the opposite side, the green side. These are people who are considerate, they're concerned for their colleagues, they don't like conflict, and they try and work with democracy. Stephen, do you know anyone who behaves like that?
It's funny that you picked me out for that, because I would, like Dorletta was saying, that's probably my go-to style, unless I'm in a difficult situation where I have to respond to conflict. Then I might go up to the red. So I think my safe space is in that green, but I can flip over quite, if provoked, into the red. But that's how comfortable zone.
I like that, if provoked. No, but the point is that if you have a conversation between the greens and the reds, there's quite often a lot of difficulty in communicating, because the red will lose patience with the greens, and they don't understand about why it's emotionally challenging to them and all the rest of it. Whereas someone in the yellows might at least appreciate the emotional part of it. And I remember working with blues. In a few years ago in my team, we used to have lots of different people, and people would say to me, David, put your blue hat on. Try and do something logical and try and do it slowly. Now, bearing in mind I used to be a programmer, and I can do that, but it's just not my natural way of behaving anymore. You have to learn to, if the red wants to communicate with this green person, then they have to learn to go slower. They have to learn not to challenge. They have to appreciate people have emotions and all the rest of it. And equally, if the green person wants to talk to the red, they've got to cut all the crap out and be very direct and get used to it. And the same happens the other way around. The way we can get a report on this, we do a report, it takes 10 minutes, it's an online report. I'll show you a bit of detail in a minute. But I was working on a project in Dubai years ago on leadership, and I had this team of 4 or 5 women from Kenya, and all their jobs were administration. So therefore, there was a reasonable chance that they might be in the blue corner. And the kind of questions you get asked are, which of these 4 sentences best reflects you? And there's maybe 20, 30 questions. It takes 10 minutes. Well, we start off with the first question, and this woman says, well, they're all like me. And it took best part of 15 minutes to go through the first question, because this woman was well and truly in the blue category. They got faster, and all I can say is when we got the reports out, she said, it's exactly like me. She was really pleased with it. But certainly, knowing who you're dealing with is very, very important. Another example, I was renting a car in Dubai, and I'm faced with 3 cars, and the guy goes into how fast they all go, size of the boot, and the size of the engine. And I look at these 3 cars and I say, I want this one, and there's 3. I said, and guess why I want this? And he had no idea. And I said, because it's brown. And the other 2 cars were white. Now, if this salesman had spent any time at all listening to me, he'd have known I don't do detail. I certainly don't do details about the size of car engines. And what was more important to me, and he could never guess it, was you can find a brown car in a car park much faster than a white one when you're in Dubai, because all the cars are white. And that's very, very non-detail red view. And I think you really should be changing your approach to listening to what your customers are telling you, so you can make some sort of judgment about how you might want to communicate with them. When you get a report, it tends to look like a CME report is about 15 pages long. A global just report's about 75 pages long. A lot more detail. I tend to prefer, but it works very well, international teams. If you're working with these guys, then you get a report that says something like this. The red, yellow, and blue objects explained, and this is actually me, and certainly those who know me will recognize this, that I tend to be pretty much red. I can be fairly direct at times, and if I'm pushed to it, I can recognize people have emotions and be very, very quiet. And that's what is called my adopted persona. So that's how I like to present myself to the world. But the one picture on the next picture, the natural persona, is how I revert when I get into difficulties. So I tend to be much more direct, red and yellow, and I've got almost no sympathy for anybody. And having this report about me tells me that if I recognise I'm going into this sort of panic mode, then I've got to come out of it again. So for me, it's really, really useful. Well, this report then is about me. And that tells me who I am, and if you show it to other people, it tells them how you are, and it particularly helps them to find a way of best communicating with you and vice versa. So my typical ideas are the kind of ideas that someone would come up with who doesn't have a lot of time for emotions and also doesn't have a lot of time for details. So I'm one of the kind of people you want in your team, but you want all the others. You want people who can deal with the detail. You want people who can deal with the emotional. How's the team feeling? Making sure everybody's okay. You need someone who can do that. You need someone who can go out and sell. Party animal who can mix lots of different people. Those are the yellows. So if you're building a team, the kind of things you would want to do is get some sort of report which shows all your team together. And that is what it's called the team wheel, which is the thing on the right. And I've got a bigger picture of it here. So fundamentally, this team is an example. You will see that a lot of people tend to be very quiet in this team because they're the blues and the greens. And you've got a couple of leaders and the ones and the twos, and only one person who is there outwardly looking, going to the world and being social. So if you want to build a diverse team, then one of the key things you can do is when you are recruiting, you need to particularly identify someone who, in this case, is principally yellow. And the point about this is, it's not that the job that they are doing might want the characteristics of someone whose main characteristics are yellow. It's getting that yellow into the team that's more important than the job. Any questions on that statement? Stephen?
I have a question. I'm getting the logic of this. I'm just thinking about the team situation, because it's never constant. There's always a dynamic that is going on. And there was a reason why I said I'll be in that green area, but when provoked, I can go into that red area. And that's something that I've learned, because if you're a natural red and things are getting really tough and quite hairy maybe, that red can dominate everything else simply because of that style. So I have learned that I have to jump into that, otherwise I'll be stomped over by everybody else otherwise. So how does this theory...
How does it work? Well,
how does it work in different dynamic situations?
It works in different ways. That the reds, if they're aware of this, the reds also need to be able to change their way of communicating if to get the team on the board. So in this case, if they got this bunch of blues and greens, no amount of yelling and screaming at them is going to have any effect.
Yes.
The blues will...
Sorry,
the blues will...
bias is that you can see my bias that the people in the red space, you've got to watch out because they won't listen. So that was my assumption. But what is everybody needs to be cognizant of everybody else. So if there's disorder, whichever area we're in, we've got to diagnose which bits we're not including. Would I be right in saying that?
Yes, I mean, certainly if the red here goes around and yells at everybody, the effect will be 0.
Mm-hmm.
If, however, they make some sort of communication, particularly with the blues, which is to do with process and justification, and these are all the steps you'll have to go through and all the rest of it, despite the fact the red hates it. If the red wants to get these people on board, that is the way they have to do stuff.
Right. Right.
More to the point, they also ought to be testing the temperature of the team in terms of emotional. How emotional are they? What kind of thing, what kind of state are they all in? And if they're all stressed to death, again, they're going to need the skills of the people in the green corner to help them get out of it. And you make an assumption here that leaders are all red, and in fact, they're not. Leaders can come from any category, and they will lead in different ways. Well, here we are. Here's a slide I prepared earlier. Wrapping up time. So of all the different ways of diversity, whether it's to do with what sexuality you are, which country you're in, and all the rest of it, in order to get a diverse team, to get the success from having a diverse team, the most important one is cognitive diversity. And that's to do with understanding how you and other people behave, and secondly, understanding how to communicate with everybody else. You can identify individuals by using profiling tools or by experience. I mean, I've learned, like Stephen, I can change hats. I can put my green hat on and my blue hat on and everything else, depending. But I do it consciously because I know I'm doing it. And second, then third, a team wheel, which I've just shown you, can show you how your team is currently built together. And if it's all in one corner, then your main problem is your customers are more likely to be the same as you. So if they're all in the same corner, then you're only tackling 25% of those possible people you could work with. And if you use the profiling, you can use it to really recruit with a bias for the kind of people you want to be a team rather than the individual. I'm going to find out Oliver and I'll lose this, but we might try it. So ask me some questions before I wrap up.
David?
Yeah.
For training, so certainly when you're conducting a class for sure, you might have like diversity, cognitive diversity in the classroom. So
Yeah.
how would you probably use this diversity to achieve the learning objectives for the learning program, for example?
Well, if we're learning about communication, for example, you can get someone who's mainly red and say, how would you explain this to someone whose main characteristics are green, and practice doing it, learning how to do it. If you're teaching a bunch of people, they're all different, then you can watch out as the reds and the yellows make a lot of noise.
Yeah.
And the greens and the blues who don't. So identify those and spend your time encouraging them to join in and quietly shutting up the noisy ones. So to make sure everybody else gets involved.
Yeah, that's actually what we call the class dynamics. So you can use that differences to maybe for the purpose of achieving the goals, the training goals.
Yeah, exactly. But certainly it's using these skills to recognize the kind of people you've got in the room, and bear in mind, as I suspect you are, in Dubai, you've got lots of different races and lots of different attitudes, lots of different approaches.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
so this tends to get lost, but this is the really important one. So back of your mind, always remember these. Any other questions? So I have one last slide, which is all my contact details on. So thank you very much for Dorletta for inviting me.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much. I always like to ask something at the end of my meetings. It's like a ritual for me. First of all,
like that because it's your personality type. Yes, right. Last word is
blue or red. Blue or red. No. Thank you very much, David, for your amazing presentation and to make us aware of the difference of diversity, that we believe everything is the same, and integrity and diversity. And you just clarified, or I hope that you clarify to all of us what's the difference in diversity, what's the difference between diversity and inclusivity, and especially what is the difference in cognitive diversity and how we can apply by using the profiling in our companies to trying to improve and trying to have more balance and trying to move forward. So thank you very, very much. But before we go, I always like to ask something. I'm apologizing for the time. Because I would like to ask to all of you, you have been here, you have spent just about 50 minutes here, and you hear a lot of David talking about cognitive diversity and everything that you heard in the last 50 minutes. What is one thing that for you was something new, or it was an aha moment, or that was really interesting? So just one thing that you can take home with you and say, it was worth to spend 50 minutes here with David because I learned this one thing. Just think about it. And I would like to ask first to Claire. Claire, can you unmute yourself? Perhaps she can because she's driving. Please don't have an accident.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Right. Well, the main message here is really the heart of the matter, and that is that there are different sorts of people, and actually, when you are one type, you're not necessarily aware of the other types. So what David is telling us is very valuable, because it's a very clear way to show people that there are other types of people and how they would best respond to that which you would, for example, like them to do. How can you motivate different people? By knowing what it is that they would respond to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alba, what was one thing that you can take with you home, something that you learned or something that was a reminder of something new?
Well, it was very interesting.
I never know this. I've never known Alba to be silent.
It's a good reminder. I have, of course, from my background, I have heard this before, this concept of diversity before, and the importance of have a variety of a team with diverse types of styles. Mm-hmm. And but it's a good reminder that that the importance. So I take with me that we should have a diverse team, and that we know every single one person of our team in order to help them and to lead them properly. Know them and to have a variety of teams. So that's as a wonderful reminder, and something that sometimes we forget. That's why I attended the webinar, to be aware of this and to remind to myself that importance. That's it.
Thank you. Ian, what was your takeaway of this presentation from David?
Well, my as you know, Dorletta, my speciality is learnability and getting out of our comfort zone, which is where we do the most amount of learning. And actually, my main thing is well, it would be to congratulate you on getting this initiative moving. Am I correct in this is your very first DG talk, or have you done some more before?
I have done this kind of interviews before, but not as a DG Talks.
Right, because I appreciate the challenge and the being out of your comfort zone and doing these things. And so it was really just to congratulate you on
Thank you.
on making the effort and actually doing it, because it's very easy to think, just spend your time thinking about these things, and actually putting it into action takes a lot of self-control. So well done. Well done.
But what was the takeaway from Dave's presentation? That was my question.
Consistency. I have seen David speak before, and so yes, I've learned that he's a very consistent character.
Thank you. Stephen,
Um,
what was your takeaway?
I just want to echo what Ian has said. Yeah, because I like the structure and the way we all got in. So this is great. So this is a great start for these types of talks. And I wish you success going forward. My takeaway is I want to do an experiment. I work in change, and very often I have to work with people about communication. An experiment I would really like to run, and David maybe another time can tell me about this. If there's a communication that needs to go out, I'd like to get somebody from the blue, green, red, and yellow, say, right, you write the communication in your own style, and then just have a look at what that communication looks like, having got the scope, and then say, right, how do we bring these things together? That would be a good experiment to do.
That is an amazing idea.
You can do it with using ChatGPT as well, see what happens.
Yeah, I don't think I'd have as much success with that.
No, but it's an amazing idea. Thank you very much, Stephen. Abdel, what was your takeaway from today's presentation?
You can hear me now?
Perfect.
Okay. So first of all, thank you very much for this event. That's really interesting. And my takeaway from this, from this presentation or maybe meeting, I would never judge people. So probably I would make full use of them. And the importance of having diverse team for success, for a successful team, it has to be diverse. So that actually works very well for me in the classroom, because I'm dealing with different styles, different people, different cognitive aspects, and yeah, that sounds interesting.
Okay, well, I have to say thank you to everybody here for the great ideas and suggestions. Really, Stephen, you make me wonder about this great, idea. So maybe we could do something together. And thank you again, David, for everything. I just post David's presentation in the chat, so you can download it now. I can send it to you by email if you want as well, and we will, edit the recording, and we will send you the link with the recording as well, so you can have a nice memory. So saying that, apologies for the overtime. Thank you very much, and thank you, David. Your last words before you want to go. What will be for everybody, David?
I think my last words are know about this, but also use it in your everyday life, whether it's to do with work or whether it's to do with your friends and your social being.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. So everybody, a round of applause.
And this is a good way also to sort conflicts, even in your day-to-day life. So this is, you need just like as if you're putting your shoes you're putting yourself in the other shoes. So you need to understand them, how they think, in order to come to an agreement.
Yeah. Thank you again. I wish you all a wonderful evening. And of course, we're going to have more meetings. This time was a presentation. Maybe in another time, it may be a workshop. Maybe other times, maybe more interview style. But we will cover different topics that will help us to become better communicators and to become better people, to have a better world. That's why we are all here, right? So, wishing you all a wonderful evening. Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much to all of you. So
Thank you, Dorleta. Congratulations.
Bye then.
Thank you, Dorleta. Thank you, David.
Ciao. Thank you, David. Yes.
Hasta la vista, Alba.
Ciao, Ander.